J.K. Rowling, Narcissist, Part 3. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. We continue our examination of the evidence to make a determination as to what J.K. Rowling is. Is she an empath, a normal, narcissistic, or a narcissist? Only a careful examination of the evidence will provide us with the material to make an informed decision. We now examine her familial relationships. This, invariably, is an important section of somebody's life. Everybody has family. They may not have anything to do with them, but that they are there. The interactions between the subject and their family gives us insight as to what they might be. Are the relations loving and genuine, founded on emotional empathy, or is a facade shown to the outside world of a supposedly idyllic family life, but behind the smiles and the hugs there are darker behaviours? Has there been any form of ostracization, and who caused it, and why did it occur? We'll begin first of all with her relationship with her late mother, Anne Rowling. One of the dominant factors is the fact that her mother was unwell. The spectre of her illness first appeared to Anne Rowling in 1978, when her hand began to tremble when she poured tea. At first, the symptoms were fleeting, and she dismissed them with a shrug. But over the next 2 years, her loss of physical control intensified. She began breaking beakers at work, and often dissolved in tears of frustration. On a good day, she could still play guitar, but the bad days began to mount up. When Joanne was 15, her mother was finally diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. The disease was triggered by the lack of a certain protein in her spinal column, which served to scramble the signals from her brain and resulted in a loss of control of her limbs. Anne was broken-hearted at having to give up her lab technician's job, but busied herself by volunteering to clean the local church. Rowling could only watch helplessly as her mother succumbed to this destructive disease. In an article the author wrote, she described how at one point her mother was reduced to crawling upstairs. The galloping progression of the illness meant that within a few years, Anne Rowling moved from walking with difficulty to using a walking frame and wheelchair. Anne Rowling attended her daughter's graduation in 1987 in a wheelchair and watched with pride as she was awarded a 2-2 in French. Anne Rowling passed away on the 30th of December 1990 at 45. Joanne had visited home 6 days earlier, but had not realized the seriousness of her mother's illness. She was extremely thin and looked exhausted. I don't know how I didn't realize how ill she was, except that I had watched her deteriorate for so long that the change at that time didn't seem so dramatic. The death of her mother sent Rowling into a tailspin. Within months her relationship ended. She moved into a hotel and would soon leave the country altogether. Evidently, the impact of her mother's death was considerable upon her, which tends to suggest a good bond between the two of them and perhaps the presence of emotional empathy. Rowling has occasionally talked publicly about her grief and her regret that her mother never knew of her writing career. Among other philanthropic activities, which we will be examining later, Rowling founded the Anne Rowling Regenerative Neurology Clinic at the University of Edinburgh with a gift of $16 million. Was that philanthropy a grandiose show of spending power in order to provoke a reaction, or was it born of love and emotional empathy for her mother that she misses, and therefore wants to do some good, given her newfound wealth, linked to what had affected her mother. When Rowling filmed an episode of Who Do You Think You Are, the genealogical TV series, the research was all on the maternal line, with particular attention to her French great-grandfather, Louis Volant. The programme showed Rowling's distress at learning that he had not been awarded a Légion d'honneur, as family law had it. She had repeated the claim in a 2009 speech upon receiving her own Légion d'honneur. Was her reaction to this a form of wounding as a consequence of the realisation that an award to a member of the family didn't exist, or was it born out of genuine shock that the family story didn't turn out to be true? It also revealed her pride on discovering that Volant had been awarded a Croix de Guerre for bravery in the First World War. "My children have very little sense of my side of the family," Rowling told the interviewer. "I married someone who's got a vast Scottish family, a clan really, which is fabulous, and I love it, and I love them. But I wanted to have something I could show my children and say, look, I also have a family. I also have a background. Because there are very few people alive on my mother's side of the family. I have a sister that's clearly very important, but above us, nearly everyone's gone." Is this lamenting the absence of family on the maternal side born out of a genuine sense of loss? Or is it a competitive response to the fact that her husband has a large extended family, but she has not? It would appear that there was a close bond between mother and daughter, and that Rowling was considerably affected by the death of her mother. She mentioned there her sister. Little is known about her relationship with her sister. They certainly remain in contact with one another. There's no information to demonstrate that there is a bad relationship between the two of them. And there are two instances which demonstrate perhaps useful evidence to understand the nature of the relationship with them. With respect to Rowling's first marriage, which we will be examining in detail in a later part, she had a ceremony in Porto's registry office, and this was attended by her sister Diane and her boyfriend. Their father did not attend. It would appear that with that marriage, that it was important for Rowling to have her sister there. Following the collapse of that marriage, Rowling had nowhere else to turn. Her relationship with her father was strained, as we will hear more about shortly, but her sister had recently married in Edinburgh and swung open her door. For the first few weeks, Rowling and her daughter stayed with her sister Diane and restaurateur brother-in-law Roger Moore in their home in Marshmont Road, although it was an arrangement that could not continue indefinitely. Her sister was able to offer her somewhere to stay, exhibiting kindness towards her sister, and, furthermore, it would appear that the relationship between the two of them has remained a good one. What about the relationship with her father? I mentioned earlier that Rowling appeared on the genealogical show Who Do You Think You Are? And interestingly, that show did not mention her father, Peter, at all. Rowling has written a novel called The Casual Vacancy, and in it there is a character called Andrew who is a restless teenager and has an abusive, belittling father. Rowling once stated, "Andrew's romantic idea that he'll go and live among the graffiti and broken windows of London, that was me," Rowling said. "I thought, I have to get away from this place, home, so all of my energies went into that." Rowling has previously stated that her father frightened her. Rowling explained, "I did not have an easy relationship with my father." But no one in The Casual Vacancy is a portrait of any living person. The interviewer asked her if she was writing from experience when Andrew, having done harm to his father, then seeks to make peace with him. Rowling explained, "To a degree, if you've ever been there, if you've ever been in a difficult and complex family situation, you will understand, I suppose, to an extent. It's like Stockholm Syndrome, isn't it? You have to make friends with the warders. This is a matter of survival. And Andrew, having dealt his father this body blow, then turns around and feels it's time to make an alliance. I think that's psychologically accurate. Some won't. These are interesting observations, with the comparison with a character in one of her books and the reference to Stockholm Syndrome that suggests that the difficult relationship with her father may well have been one which was abusive, and yet she somehow felt that she needed to keep him on side. Her relationship with her father, as far as the public record went, was nothing of note until the death of her mother in 1990. Rowling left for Portugal soon after. As I mentioned, her father didn't come to Porto for her marriage in 1992, an absence he claims was due to not having a valid passport. It's also noteworthy he wasn't a guest at the Edinburgh wedding of his daughter Diane in 1993. Neither sibling attended their father's second marriage ceremony. Rowling returned to the UK with her child after the collapse of her marriage in 1993 and was helped by her sister, but not her father. When Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was published in 1997, it was dedicated to Rowling's mother, sister and daughter, all her living relations, that is, except her father. There's no evidence or public testimony of infidelity on Peter Rowling's part during his marriage and during the 10-year physical decline of his wife, Anne Rowling. Only the circumstantial evidence of the breakup of Janet Gallivan, who he later married soon after Anne's death, and her move to Chepstow suggests anything inappropriate. The suggestion was that he was having an affair with his secretary whilst his wife was dying, although there's no clear evidence of that, although the fact that his secretary's marriage broke up soon after Peter Rowling's wife died suggests that there was perhaps, at best, undue haste following the demise of his marriage and entering into a relationship with somebody else that was married and also was a colleague, or at worst, an affair was taking place and both were cheating on their partners. Interestingly, Peter Rowling told reporters that he finds the rumours insulting and that he didn't take up with his secretary until more than a year after Anne Rowling's death. He's also hurt by claims that a rift developed between him and Joanne Rowling because he met his current wife Jan, his former secretary at Rolls-Royce in Bristol, after her mother was struck down by multiple sclerosis. He said, "The inference is a bloody insult. I challenge anyone to wire me up to a lie detector and ask me the truth. My relationship with Jan didn't start until a year after Anne died." It was not until Rowling's fourth book, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, that she devoted one of her works to her father. It was suggested that she was furious with him over his marriage to second wife Janet after her mother's death. Again, Peter stated, "It's all lies. It has been suggested I was drawn to Janet while Anne was fighting her illness. Well, that is a bloody insult. I was not drawn to anybody while Anne was alive and for some time after her death. I have worried in the past that if Joanne keeps reading it, she will believe it. People say there is no smoke without fire. But I have spoken to Joanne and told her it's not true, and she accepts that." Peter said that his relationship with Janet didn't start until December 1991, more than a year after Anne's death. "I find it odd people can think that we don't get on. Isn't it funny she dedicated a book to me, if that is the case? What no one knows is that I took Joanne and Di to Portugal in June 1991, 6 months after Anne passed away, as we tried to come to terms with it. If there was some sort of rift at that time, we would hardly have gone on a family holiday. We have discussed all these stories saying we don't get on, and it has actually made us closer." There was a reconciliation of father and daughter by 2000. Rowling's father and stepmother were present at the University of Exeter giving their most famous alumna an honorary doctorate and were invited to the 2001 Boxing Day Rowling-Murray wedding in Edinburgh. Joanne paid £10,000 for myself and Janet to travel up in a Cessna executive jet, and we had a Mercedes limo pick us up from the airport. I was bursting with pride. He still has fond memories of her secret wedding 2 years ago at their Scottish mansion. It was a fantastic event. I was full of pride and so happy for Jo. She looked gorgeous, lovely. It was a marvellous day. He was a guest amongst just 14 others. Jan and I had our instructions to drive to Bristol Airport, and we had to go to a special area where the private jets are. Joanne picked up the £10,000 bill. Jan and I got changed, and then it was time for the ceremony, which was kept quite simple. I wasn't called upon to formally give her away or make a speech or anything like that. It was just a lovely day. We stayed over that night and flew back from Edinburgh the next morning. The rift, however, reappeared again in 2003, which apparently was as a consequence of him selling an autographed copy of Harry Potter books that Joanne had given him via a Sotheby's auction. He tried to sell 4, but only 1 met the minimum price required. This reaction, the reinstatement of the rift, was this a threat to Joanne Rowling's control as a consequence of her father's behaviour, or was it a genuine reaction to her being annoyed that he was giving away what was a personal gift and trying to make money from it? Peter Rowling claimed in a 2012 Daily Mail article after the publication of Casual Vacancy and rumours that the violent father in the novel was based on him that he and Joanne Rowling had reunited. He explained that they're on good terms. He said, "We're fine, we talk now, everything is good, there is no problem anymore. Families are funny things, but I'm incredibly proud of my daughter. She is a brilliant girl. I have read all her books, though the first one was my favourite, and I look forward to reading her new one. I have heard it contains a vile character supposedly based on me, a man who has a difficult relationship with a teenager, but I don't know if that's true. Either way, I'll keep smiling. That's the sort of person I am." 2 years ago, Rowling admitted it's such a huge thing to be estranged from a parent, but there would have to be very big reasons for that. So that's where I am. I have my reasons. It wasn't a good relationship for a very long time, but I had a need to please that I kept going for a long time, and then there just came a point at which I had to pull up and say, I can't do this anymore. Accordingly, an interesting relationship between Joanne Rowling and her father. You've heard the evidence in respect of it. Is it the case that he was an overbearing and unpleasant father who cheated on his wife and sought to sell a gift that had been sent to him by his daughter? And as a consequence, Joanne Rowling quite correctly decided that she would have nothing to do with him. Are we witnessing the behaviours of a narcissist, perhaps? And might that impact upon what Joanne Rowling might be as a consequence of the passing on of the genetic predisposition and the creation of a lack of control environment? Might it be the case that Peter Rowling was a decent father and he's being smeared through a revision of history? Is it the case that Joanne Rowling quite properly sought to distance herself from a difficult father, one of whom she was frightened that had caused problems for her, yet one she felt that she needed to continue to please? That observation may be very telling. Is she maintaining a facade when she talks about this relationship, or is she telling the truth of what has gone on? And that, as a consequence of the way that she's been treated, it has caused her to perhaps be exposed to a narcissist whilst not becoming one herself, with all the consequential issues that arise from that, one of which can include seeking to please people and feeling like they're in a situation of Stockholm Syndrome. Some very interesting points raised by the familial relationships, which appear to show a close one with her mother, and one whereby she was hard hit by her mother's death, as one would expect for most people, a good relationship with her sister, and a somewhat troubled one with her father. Much to consider arising out of those familial relationships, I'm sure you will agree, as we next consider her romantic relationships in part 4. Join me there.